Have you ever, like, walked into a room that, on paper, should be just an absolute
Oh,
masterpiece?
absolutely. The kind of place that clearly cost, a small fortune to put together.
Right, exactly. I'm talking about spaces with those beautiful, polished concrete floors and that architectural overhead lighting that washes down the walls just right.
Yeah, the imported minimalist furniture, the perfectly curated layout, the whole nine yards.
Exactly. But you walk in, and instead of feeling this sense of profound calm, you feel this, I don't know, this bizarre, subtle anxiety, like your brain is just buzzing.
And the room just feels somehow ungrounded, like it's floating.
Yes, and visible collapse. That is exactly the feeling.
Yeah.
You're looking around trying to figure out what went wrong, you know.
You check the layout, you check the furniture placement, maybe you adjust a lamp or something.
Right, but there's this relentless drain on the energy of the space. And that specific feeling, that invisible drain, is exactly what we are dissecting today.
It's a surprisingly common reaction, actually, to highly curated minimalist spaces.
Yeah, so we've got a custom deep dive lined up for you today, diving into a really fascinating document from the Artflex Canvas community. It's called The Focal Point Formula, Engineering the Architectural Anchor Series.
Which is such an intriguing text. I mean, it really doesn't read like your standard interior design blog post about, throw in some pillows on a couch.
Not at all. It treats the interior of a home as a serious architectural and, honestly, psychological puzzle.
It basically operates as a master blueprint. It really analyzes the intersection of aesthetic philosophy, the math of human vision, and the physical engineering required to make a room actually function, like on a neurological level.
I mean, I found myself looking at the walls in my own house completely differently after reading it. I actually want you, listening to this right now, to visualize your own primary living space.
Yeah, think about the walls, the furniture, the negative space between all your objects.
Does it ever feel like your premium pieces are just sort of floating in a void? Because our mission today is to decode this focal point formula.
We're going to examine how this brand, Artflex Canvas, is using their 10 new prints in the Architectural Anchor series to solve this invisible problem.
We're getting into the psychology of space, the extreme technical precision of modern printmaking, and even the back-end e-commerce automation that makes it all possible.
It's a lot to cover, but to really grasp the solution this text proposes, we have to start by rigorously diagnosing the disease, so to speak.
Right. And the source material spends a lot of time defining this concept it calls the silent vacuum.
The silent vacuum. Yeah, if we don't understand the mechanics of this vacuum, literally nothing else in the formula will make sense.
So the text describes it as this quiet, empty visual drift that literally pulls the energy out of your most thoughtful design choices. Let's break down why that happens.
Well, because to the average person, if you buy great stuff and put it in a clean room, it should look great.
Right. So why does this vacuum even form in modern homes?
It really comes down to how human vision actually works and what our brains demand from our environment.
So I'm with you.
When we talk about minimalist design, which, completely dominates high-end architecture today, we are talking about stripping away excess.
You remove the molding, the baseboards, the patterned wallpaper, the clutter, all of it.
Exactly. You are left with pure architecture, flat planes of drywall or concrete, straight lines, large windows. But here is the biological catch.
The catch being that our eyes hate that.
Basically, yeah. The human eye did not evolve to look at endless, blank, flat planes.
Because our eyes are built to scan for predators.
Right.
Or for food, or changes in the environment. We are constantly searching.
Precisely. The scientific term involves saccades, which are these rapid, jerky movements our eyes make as they jump from point to point.
Like they're building a mental map of our surroundings.
Exactly. When your eye moves across a room, it is desperately looking for a resting place. It wants a point of high contrast or structural significance to anchor its map.
So in a traditional cluttered room, your eye has a million places to land.
Right. It might be too busy, it might be chaotic, but it's not lost.
But in a minimalist room, there's just nowhere to land.
Nowhere. And this is what the document calls the burden of minimalist space. Minimalism is brutally demanding on human psychology.
Because when you have a vast, perfectly smooth, blank wall, your brain doesn't just relax into that emptiness.
It perceives it as a void. The eye scans the concrete, hits the beautiful sofa, moves back up to the wall, and finds nothing. So it keeps moving.
Wow. And that creates the instinctual visual drift.
Exactly. The text actually calls a blank wall in these layouts a loud, distracting gap in the room's narrative.
I love that phrasing, a loud, distracting gap. But I actually want to push back on this a little bit, or at least play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure, go for it.
Because the whole ethos of modern minimalism, tracing all the way back to people like Mies van der Rohe or the Zen traditions, is literally about the appreciation of empty space, right?
It's the common understanding, yeah.
So why is a blank wall suddenly considered a loud, distracting gap instead of, peaceful emptiness? Isn't the point to have nothing there?
That is a brilliant distinction to make, and it's where a lot of amateur designers completely get tripped up.
Okay, so what are they missing?
Peaceful emptiness only exists when the boundaries of the space are clearly established and grounded. Think of a traditional Japanese Zen garden.
Okay, with the raked sand and everything.
Right. The raked sand represents emptiness, the void, the ocean, but what actually makes it peaceful?
I mean, I guess it's the pattern?
It's the placement of a few highly deliberate, heavy stones. Without those stones, it's just a sandbox.
Oh, wow.
The heavy stones define the emptiness around them.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
The heavy stone gives the eye permission to appreciate the empty sand.
Exactly. The human brain needs a center of gravity. When you have a luxury space that lacks this visual anchor, the subconscious searching just never stops.
And that constant neurological scanning has to take a real psychological toll.
It's exhausting. You walk into your beautiful, expensive living room, and instead of feeling decompression, you feel this, low-grade hum of restlessness.
Because the room lacks resolution.
Right.
I'm picturing an orchestra. Imagine you buy front-row tickets to see the world's greatest symphony. You have the finest violinists, a massive brass section, incredible cellos.
All your premium design elements, basically.
Right, your concrete panels, your perfect lighting, your imported rug. But they completely forgot to hire a conductor.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
So the instruments are all just playing their own parts, kind of drifting in and out of time. It's beautiful noise, but there is no center. There's no focal point bringing it together into a single, massive piece of music.
And that feeling of beautiful but unstructured noise is the silent vacuum in action.
The energy leaks out because there is no hierarchy in the visual field.
Exactly. So assuming we recognize this in our own spaces, we feel that visual drift, we realize our expensive furniture is just floating. How do we actually fix it?
Right, because the intuitive leap most people make is, oh, I just need to go buy a painting to fill the wall.
But the source text argues that your standard decor instincts will completely fail you here.
Really? Why is that?
Because the standard instinct treats art as a decorative accessory, like a throw pillow or a vase.
Just something pretty to look at.
Yeah. But the focal point formula, which this document outlines, demands a total paradigm shift. It argues that choosing art for a minimalist interior is not about decoration at all.
It's equivalent to selecting a load-bearing pillar for a building.
Exactly.
The text says the 10 prints in this new architectural anchor series demand structural awareness. They are designed to introduce a deliberate coordinate system into the home.
Right.
Let's really dig into that phrase. What does it actually mean to introduce coordinate system with a flat piece of canvas?
Well, think back to high school geometry, right? The Cartesian plane.
Oh boy, okay, the X and Y axis.
Yeah, you have the X-axis running horizontally, the Y-axis running vertically, and the Z-axis creating depth.
Right.
When you step into a room, your brain is instantly trying to map the X, Y, and Z axes of the physical space so it can understand the volume of the room.
It's mapping the boundaries.
Exactly. So when you place a highly specific, mathematically rigorous piece of art on the primary wall, you are giving the brain the ultimate reference point.
You were laying down the origin point, basically.
Yeah. Yes, the 0, 0 coordinate for the entire room.
So the art isn't just, sitting in the room. It's actively defining the geometry of the room itself.
It acts as the physical and visual anchor. When the geometric lines within the canvas, the hard edges, the vertical drops, when they interact correctly with the physical space of the room literally locks in.
Locks in, I like that.
The eye hits the art, recognizes the structure, and suddenly the surrounding empty wall space just makes sense.
The visual drift we were just talking about fades away instantly.
Because the eye finally has its heavy stone in the Zen garden.
Okay, I can hear people listening to this and thinking, okay, but when I buy art, I just hold up a color swatch and make sure the blue in the painting matches the blue in my rug.
Oh, of course.
I mean, we've all been there, right?
Yeah.
You just want the room to tie together. Why is the document so aggressive about this? Why is it a fundamental structural mistake to just color match your decor?
Because color matching is a surface-level remedy for a structural disease.
Okay, unpack that a little.
If the foundation of your house is cracked and the walls are literally sagging, you don't fix the architecture by painting the siding a lovely shade of sage green.
Right, that would be completely pointless.
Color matching treats the art as an afterthought. It's just an echo of the furniture. But in the focal point formula, the art is the active dictator of the space.
It dictates the architecture, not the upholstery.
Precisely. When you hang one of these architectural prints, you are forcing the viewer's eye to acknowledge the structural lines of the room.
Like how?
Well, a massive canvas with stark vertical lines draws attention to the height of the ceiling. A deep, heavy charcoal plane grounds the weight of the floor.
So the art is in a direct dialogue with the hard edges of your window frames or those steel beams.
It is communicating with the building itself, not just trying to blend in with a sofa cushion.
It really is like dropping the keystone into a Roman archway.
Oh, that's a perfect way to look at it.
You have all these separate blocks of stone curving upward, defying gravity, but they are incredibly unstable. The moment that center keystone is wedged into the top, the pressure is distributed outward down the columns.
And the arch suddenly goes from being a fragile pile of rocks to a permanent load-bearing structure.
Right, that one single piece of geometry changes the physics of everything around it.
And that analogy perfectly captures the stakes of this design philosophy. Because if the goal is to create this powerful, locked-in coordinate system, we can't just throw any image onto the canvas.
Right, the actual graphics printed on the piece are vital.
And this is where the Artflex canvas framework fundamentally clashes with our traditional historical ideas of what constitutes luxury art.
This was the part of the source material that really challenged my own assumptions, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a big shift.
We're getting into the battle between absolute graphic clarity and the illusion of depth. The text explicitly states that the biggest mistake you can make when styling these modern minimal spaces is using art that tries to do too much.
It calls out messy gradients, chaotic brushstrokes, thick layers of impasto oil paint.
And simulated 3D depth.
Which is fascinating because for hundreds of years, that exact list of traits was the literal definition of high art.
Exactly. But the Architectural Anchor series completely rejects that. Instead, it relies on absolute graphic clarity.
The pieces consist of interlocking gold lines, brushed bronze accents, and deep, matte charcoal planes.
And the most critical rule laid out in the text is absolutely no false 3D perspectives or fake shadows. Why is this hard line drawn?
We have to look at the history of spatial design to understand why. For centuries, traditional artwork, think of a Renaissance landscape or a Dutch still life, functioned as a window.
Right.
The artists used the invention of linear perspective, horizons, shading, vanishing points to trick your eye. The goal was tromper l'œil, deceiving the eye into looking into another world.
It's an illusion of depth that breaks the physical reality of the wall.
Exactly. You look at a classic painting of a valley, and your brain thinks you're looking 5 miles into the distance, even though you are looking at a flat piece of canvas.
And in a highly ornate, cluttered Victorian parlor, a fake window into a valley works fine.
But modern minimalist architecture is fundamentally about honesty. It celebrates the materials. The concrete is clearly concrete. The steel is steel, the glass is glass.
So the Architectural Anchor series honors what the text calls the physical flat plane of the architecture.
It doesn't want to trick you into looking miles into a fake distance. It wants you to acknowledge the wall itself.
It's refusing to lie to the viewer.
Yes. When a piece of art tries to create fake 3D depth in a modern architectural room, it creates this cognitive dissonance.
The crisp lines of the room are telling your brain one thing about the physical space, and the messy, deep oil painting is telling your brain a contradictory story.
The Architectural Anchor series behaves as an integrated design element. It matches the physical reality of the architecture.
It reinforces the wall. It doesn't try to punch a fake hole through it.
Precisely.
I get the philosophical purity of that, but let me play the skeptic again for a minute.
Always a good idea.
A lot of people equate luxury with visible labor. They want to see the artist's hand. They want to see 50 translucent layers of oil glaze or the frenetic energy of chaotic brushstrokes splashing across the canvas.
Sure.
When they hear clean, hard-edged geometric print with gold lines, they might think, well, that sounds too simple. How does that hold its own in a high-end space without feeling corporate or cold?
It's a very valid question, and it really forces us to redefine what luxury means in a modern context.
Okay, how so?
In an era where we are constantly bombarded by visual noise, chaos, and complexity, both digitally and physically, absolute clarity has actually become the ultimate luxury.
Oh, that's an interesting way to put it.
Think about the engineering in a high-end sports car or a luxury watch. The luxury isn't in seeing a messy tangle of wires and gears. The luxury is in the flawless, uncompromising precision of the final surface.
So the brain craves that honesty and precision in architectural spaces, too.
Yes.
Hanging a fake 3D painting in a modern room is like hanging a picture of a door on a solid wall and pretending it's a real exit.
It's a visual lie.
Your subconscious knows it's a lie. But these prints, with their matte charcoal and their razor-sharp gold lines, they are telling the absolute truth.
They are stating, I am a flat surface, you are a flat surface. Let's create a structural baseline together.
And the power of that conceptual graphic honesty really cannot be overstated. However, having a beautiful philosophy about flat planes and geometric truth is completely useless if the physical execution of that object is flawed, right?
Absolutely. If a geometric line is supposed to establish the coordinate system of your room and that line is blurry or the canvas is sagging, the entire illusion of structure collapses instantly.
Which brings us to the technical obsession of this studio.
Right.
The source material goes deep into the technical precision required to pull this off, specifically focusing on 300 DPI and physical engineering.
The workflow they describe is just fascinating.
It starts with AI ideation. Let's pause there because AI is a massive buzzword right now. How exactly is a studio using AI to create mathematical balance rather than just, typing a prompt to get a pretty picture?
In the context of hard-edge geometric art, generative AI is a profoundly powerful tool for testing mathematical configurations.
So it's not text to image like we usually think of it.
No, it's not about asking an algorithm to paint a picture of a house. It's about feeding the system parameters for visual weight distribution.
Okay, I think I follow.
The artist can use AI algorithms to generate thousands of variations of intersecting lines, testing the exact ratio of a matte black void to a single gold vector.
Testing the math.
Right. It can calculate how the human eye tracks across different geometric proportions, checking for things like the golden ratio or the rule of thirds at a speed a human just couldn't match.
So it's more like computational architecture than traditional sketching. They're testing the structural integrity of the design digitally.
Precisely. The AI helps discover the mathematically perfect anchor. But that is only the raw material.
Right, because the document makes it clear that the workflow then moves heavily into manual human refinement in Photoshop.
This is where every single line, every edge, every plane of color is meticulously cleaned, sharpened, and perfected by a human hand.
And the crucial output standard they mandate for this is a flat 300 DPI at massive gallery scale.
Yes.
Okay, 300 DPI. DPI stands for dots per inch, right?
Correct. It's the standard metric for print resolution.
But I want to really understand the physical reality of this. If I have a tiny photograph, 300 DPI makes sense, but these are massive canvases meant to anchor entire living rooms.
They're huge.
Usually when you blow an image up to the size of a wall, the resolution tanks, doesn't it?
It drops drastically. This is the inherent problem with raster graphics.
Raster graphics.
Images made of pixels, like standard photographs.
Right.
If you have a photograph that is 300 DPI at the size of a postcard, and you stretch it to be 6 feet wide, the printer is forced to stretch those tiny colored squares.
And the result is that dreaded pixelation.
Exactly. The edges get soft, blurry, and artifacted.
But the Architectural Anchor series completely avoids this. How?
By utilizing vector graphics and engineering the final export to retain that 300 DPI density regardless of physical size.
So what's a vector graphic, for those who might not know?
A vector graphic isn't made of pixels at all. It's made of mathematical equations. A line between point A and point B is calculated by the computer.
Meaning you can scale it to the size of a postage stamp or the size of a skyscraper, and the edge will remain mathematically absolute.
Exactly. So when they export that vector data at a locked 300 DPI for a massive canvas, it means the printheads are laying down 300 microscopic droplets of ink into every single square inch of that massive fabric.
That is an insane level of ink density for something that big.
It is.
It means there is absolutely zero pixelation, no blurriness, those gold vector lines are razor sharp. But I have to ask, why?
Why go to all that trouble?
Yeah, if this is a massive structural anchor meant to be viewed from a sofa across a large living room, why go through the grueling, computationally heavy process of ensuring it's 300 DPI for someone standing, like, 2 inches away from the canvas?
Right. Nobody looks at wall art with a magnifying glass.
Exactly. So I do it.
You'd be surprised who looks closely, but more importantly, it goes back to the concept of the high-fidelity curation process. It is an obsession with structural integrity.
Okay.
Even if the viewer is standing 20 feet away, the human subconscious is incredibly adept at registering visual noise. A soft, blurry edge creates a micro level of visual drift.
Oh, wow. So even if you don't consciously see the blur, your brain feels it.
Yes. A razor-sharp 300 dpi edge registers in the brain as a hard physical boundary, even from across the room. Ensuring the physical object perfectly mirrors the digital ideal is a commitment to the philosophy of the series.
It's about trust.
Trust, exactly.
The artwork is commanding the geometry of the room, and if the details fall apart upon inspection, you lose trust in the structure.
And it's not just the digital printing either. It's the physical engineering of the object itself.
Right. The source detailed how the canvas is physically stretched over premium museum-quality wooden bars.
The physical tension is just as critical as the digital resolution. Canvas is a fabric, right? It wants to move, warp, and sag over time, especially as humidity and temperature change in a house.
Makes sense.
The wood behind it, if it's cheap pine, will bow and twist. If the canvas sags even a single millimeter, a perfectly straight geometric gold line suddenly has a curve in it.
And the coordinate system collapses.
Exactly. The uniform tension applied during the stretching process, utilizing rigid, warp-resistant, museum-quality wood, preserves that clean, architectural edge.
The canvas has to be tensioned almost like a drumhead to physically resist the natural pull of the fabric.
Yes, it's under immense pressure.
You really have to imagine the tactile reality of this object arriving at your door. It is not just a rolled-up poster.
No, not at all.
It's the rigidity of the heavy wood holding the frame perfectly square. It's the uncompromising straightness of the vector lines fighting against the organic weave of the canvas.
It is quite literally a piece of structural engineering.
And pulling off that level of obsessive engineering on a single one-off canvas in a local studio is incredibly difficult.
Very difficult.
But doing it at a global scale, keeping that uncompromising standard across a massive catalog of designs, that requires a completely different type of architectural design.
It requires mastering the invisible architecture of business logistics.
This was the major twist in the source material that I absolutely did not see coming, but in hindsight, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, the deep dive transitions from physical art to seamless business automation.
Because Artflex Canvas is an independent luxury studio, but they are managing a catalog of 160 products.
That's a huge catalog for an independent team.
How do they maintain this crazy high-fidelity quality control without turning into a massive bureaucratic corporation?
The answer in the text is a highly streamlined integration between Shopify, Gelato, and a very specific tagging system.
It is a masterclass in modern back-end logistics. It is really the only way a boutique studio can maintain a dual focus on extreme artistic precision and global scalable distribution.
The source outlines exactly how this digital assembly line functions. Let's say the studio finalizes a new piece for the Architectural Anchor series.
Okay, the AI ideation is done, the Photoshop refinement is flawless, the 300 dpi vector file is locked.
Right. The moment that file is ready, the creators apply a single specific catalog tag in the back end of their system.
And that tag is Architectural Anchor 2026.
Yes, and that single tag is the digital trigger for a massive cascade of automated events.
The millisecond that tag is applied, it instantly updates the digital storefront on Shopify.
It automatically pulls the new product into a beautifully formatted, curated collection page.
It sets up the pricing tiers, the size variants, and simultaneously pings Gelato to handle the global fulfillment, localized printing, and tracking.
For listeners who might not be familiar with the back end of global e-commerce, Gelato is a highly sophisticated global print-on-demand network.
But not the cheap kind used for, like, novelty t-shirts.
No. They utilize a network of localized, high-fidelity production hubs all around the world. What's brilliant about this API integration, this digital handshake between the storefront and the production network, is what it allows the artist to not do.
Right. By offloading the logistical burden to this specific tag system and the API webhooks, the creators at the studio can spend 99% of their energy purely on design.
They aren't spending their days taping cardboard boxes, printing shipping labels, or managing warehouse inventory.
They are mathematically balancing gold vectors.
The architecture of the business perfectly reflects the architecture of the art they sell. It is a clean, minimalist, hyper-efficient system.
But let me push back on this, because when we talk about high-end luxury goods, automation often have a bit of a dirty connotation.
It does, yeah.
Usually when we think of a luxury studio, we picture a master artisan in a dusty, sunlit workshop, hand packaging a canvas, signing a certificate of authenticity, and tying a silk ribbon around the box.
The classic romantic vision.
Right. Does fully automating the production and shipping process via a global network risk losing the soul of that independent luxury studio touch?
That is a very traditional romanticized view of luxury, and it raises a crucial point about how the definition of luxury is actually evolving today.
How so?
The source text uses the phrase immaculate experience. In the context of modern structural art, luxury is not about a handmade, inconsistent process. It is about absolute precision, predictability, and flawless execution.
So the lack of human touch in the logistics is actually a feature, not a bug.
Precisely. Human touch in logistics introduces human error. The listener's experience of precision begins the moment they land on the beautifully formatted Shopify website.
There are no broken links, no cluttered menus, the UX is pristine.
And that precision continues seamlessly through the checkout process. The automation guarantees that the high-fidelity standard is never compromised by a tired warehouse worker misplacing a label.
The flawless, structurally perfect box arrives at your door exactly when the tracking algorithm predicted it would.
Walk through the life cycle of that webhook with me, because the scale of it is just mind-bending.
Okay, so the artist in the studio finishes the 300 DPI render. They hit save. They apply the tag Architectural Anchor 2026.
A JSON payload of data fires through the internet in a fraction of a second. A server on the other side of the world receives it.
Suddenly, a physical supply chain springs into action. Premium wood is allocated. Massive, high-definition print nozzles are prepped and aligned.
A local production node, perhaps geographically closest to the end buyer to reduce the carbon footprint, executes the physical build to the exact mathematical specifications of the digital file.
It is invisible, frictionless architecture.
It is the ultimate manifestation of the focal point formula applied to business. And the business cycle is technically complete once the art arrives safely at the customer's home.
But, as the design notes in the source material reveal, the journey of the canvas itself has actually just begun the moment you drive a nail into the drywall.
Yes. This brings us to a concept that completely upended my understanding of what a canting is actually supposed to do in a home.
The text explores the environmental cycle and viewing art as a dynamic system.
Think about how we instinctively view our homes. We treat them like fixed, static snapshots.
You buy the couch, you position the lamp, you hang the canvas, and you dust your hands off. The puzzle is solved. The room is done.
But a room is not a static diorama. It is a highly dynamic environmental system that changes radically every single hour of the day.
And even more drastically across the seasons. The interplay between the macro-environmental shifts of the planet and the static artwork on your wall is a core component of this design philosophy.
Let's talk about light, because the lighting in a room is never constant.
Right, the text points out that a wall sitting in soft, indirect, diffused shadow during a hazy summer afternoon might be struck by a low, blinding, direct angle of harsh sunlight in the middle of winter.
This is basic planetary physics. The Earth tilts on its axis as it orbits the sun.
In the summer, the sun is high in the sky, casting shorter shadows and entering windows at a steep angle.
In the winter, the sun is low on the horizon, penetrating deep into the interior of a room at a sharp horizontal angle.
Furthermore, the color temperature of the light changes, right? Morning light is cool, heavily weighted in the blue spectrum, high on the Kelvin scale.
And evening light, the golden hour, is warm, heavily red and orange.
And the source notes analyze exactly how the Architectural Anchor series is engineered to interact with this shifting light.
It's not just flat paint. The gold line work and the brushed bronze accents incorporated into these pieces are highly reactive to the environment.
Because they are metallic, they don't just absorb light, they scatter and reflect it.
A piece that looks incredibly deep, subtle, and matte at noon when the light is overhead and indirect can transform entirely a few hours later.
As the low afternoon sun begins to hit those specific metallic vectors, the art catches the light. It can become a radiant, glowing focal point at 4 p.m. Okay, I have to stop you there, because we just spent this entire deep dive talking about a rigid focal point formula.
We did.
We talked about absolute graphic clarity, hard lines, flat planes, locked-in coordinate systems, and mathematical permanence.
Right.
Isn't it a massive contradiction to then turn around and say, actually, the art breathes, it's dynamic, and it constantly changes its appearance with the shifting sun?
It sounds contradictory at first glance, I agree, but it's actually a brilliant synthesis.
How so?
The underlying geometry, the coordinate system, the x and y axes established by the massive canvas remains absolute and permanent. It never wavers. It grounds the room structurally.
Okay, so the structure is solid.
But the surface expression of that geometry is what interacts with the light.
Ah, I see. So the bones stay the same, but the skin reacts.
Exactly. The art isn't just a static anchor, it becomes a living participant in the room's environmental cycle.
It acts almost like a sophisticated architectural sundial.
It marks the passage of time, catching the morning blue light differently than the evening amber light, without ever losing its structural integrity or its ability to hold the room together.
That completely transforms how you, as the homeowner, interact with your own space.
Imagine the sensory experience of living with this over a year.
You wake up on a Tuesday in the dead of summer. The sun is high. The matte charcoal planes of the canvas on your wall are absorbing that cool, muted, indirect morning light.
It feels quiet, it feels grounded, it absorbs the visual noise of the room.
It acts as a visual resting place, solving that silent vacuum we discussed at the very beginning.
Exactly. But then, fast forward 6 months, it's the dead of winter, the days are short.
You are sitting in that exact same room. The sun is setting early. The angle of light is low and harsh, blasting through the window.
And you watch those brushed bronze accents on the canvas literally catch fire in the light. They glow.
They project warmth and energy back into the freezing room. It's the exact same geometric anchor, but it's giving you a completely different emotional resonance based entirely on the rotation of the planet.
It grounds you not just in the physical space of your room, but in the temporal space of the seasons. You are connected to the macro environment outside your walls, mediated through this piece of extreme precision engineering on your wall.
And this dynamic relationship between the rigid structure of the room and the environmental responsiveness of the artwork perfectly sets the stage for where this studio is heading next.
The roadmap laid out in our sources is really exciting.
We've gone on quite a journey today to understand the foundation. We started by diagnosing that leaking energy, the anxiety of the visual vacuum in modern minimalist spaces.
We solved it with the deliberate coordinate system of the focal point formula.
We explored the extreme 300 DPI physical precision, the vector mathematics, the invisible automated business back end of APIs and localized production.
And finally, this beautiful environmental cycle of the art breathing with the sun.
And what the studio's roadmap reveals is that everything we just discussed is merely the foundational step.
The current architectural anchor series brings the necessary structure. It builds the skeleton of the space.
You have to lay the foundation before you can build the house.
But the upcoming collection mentioned in the text, titled Artistic Visions, will take that firmly established structure and begin exploring completely different territories.
Moving into organic texture, fluid forms, and perhaps breaking the rigid geometry.
Which makes perfect sense. Once you have the structural anchor locked in and the room is grounded, you have permission to start introducing fluidity and organic chaos without the room collapsing back into that visual drift.
It is a highly sophisticated master plan for interior design. You secure the perimeter, and then you can play within it.
It is a phenomenal approach to spatial curation. It treats the home not as a place to store pretty objects, but as a machine for living, where every visual element serves a psychological purpose.
For everyone listening right now, if you are looking around your living room, your home office, or your studio, and you realize you have that visual vacuum,
If you realize your space is beautiful but ungrounded, and you want to find your room's true center of gravity, you really need to see the execution of these pieces to fully grasp the scale of the precision.
the visual clarity,
Yeah.
the absolute starkness of a 300 DPI vector line on a matte plane really has to be seen to be fully understood.
I highly encourage you to direct your browser over to artflexcanvas.com.
Explore the entire 10-piece architectural anchor series live on their storefront right now. See the gold vector line work for yourself, look at the geometry, and figure out which specific architectural print will introduce that deliberate coordinate system into your own space.
It's been a real privilege to unpack this document today. It's rare that we get to analyze design philosophies that genuinely alter how we perceive the physics and psychology of our daily environments.
It really has been a mind-bending deep dive. Thank you to everyone for listening and joining us on this custom journey through the focal point formula. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building on everything we've explored today about space, light, and geometry.
Let's hear it.
Think back to what we said at the very beginning about building a house, pouring the concrete, establishing structural permanence. If a meticulously engineered massive architectural print acts as a literal physical anchor for your room. If it dictates the geometric flow of your space, catching your eye, stopping the visual drift, and evolving dynamically with the winter sun. How does establishing that permanent center of gravity subtly rewire your own daily
Oh, that's
habits?
a great question.
How does fixing the visual drift of a room subtly fix your own emotional grounding and change the very way you physically move and rest within your own home? Until next time.